Welcome back, baseball fans. 1974-77 Carryover League Offseason Moves Part 3 tonight. The first 16 teams have 4 players that they like to keep indicated in the after column I. It says after. The first digit is a 4 all the way down to the first 16 teams. So tonight we're going to pick it up teams 17 to 24. Until you see the work that's gone into this. And we'll fade it in. You'll see we're now down to, looks like 10 keepers, of which only 3 go on waivers and 7 go on the retirement list. So that makes the retirement list look even better. But we had some interesting stories tonight. There was an incredibly successful one-on-one trade that helped 2 franchises tremendously. And there's another storyline I want to get into. Let's begin the curious case of the Boston Red Sox. So the Red Sox started this process with just 3 keepers, Yastrzemski, Bill Lee, and Roger Moret. And but that's fine. That means that they probably have a lot of good talent from 75 World Series team, 76. They got a lot of their pieces in place. They just needed some window dressing, but they did need to add another keeper. So they had to look around and make a deal, maybe. Their emphasis was the bullpen. All 4 pitchers from a year ago are gone. They were journeymen. Not only one of the 4, or 2 of the 4 actually played for Boston. It was a terrible bullpen, short-circuited their season. The rotation is set. Louis Tiant, Bill Lee, Roger Moret, Rick Wise. But they needed a completely new bullpen. And with 4 new pitchers to get, I decided I would first search for the lefty. They can only get 1 because they have Lee and Moret. But check this out. First thing I did is I went to the Boston 74 stats because I was kind of curious about this. Looking for left-handed pitching in this era for the Boston Red Sox. Now, this is the green monster effect during that era, I suppose. There's Bill Lee. There's Roger Moret. They do fine. They know how to pitch in the green monster at Fenway. They had Bob Veal. He missed a year. He was very old then, 38 years old. He used to be a starting pitcher for Pittsburgh, only threw 13 innings. And that's about it. Nothing memorable there. Okay, how about the World Series year of 75? Well, it got a little interesting here. There's a guy, a third guy. His name is Jim Burton. He's 25 years old. He pitches very well in 29 games, 53 innings. 145 whip is all right for Fenway, but that's a card for a lefty. I want this card. That's a good card. Well, Strat-O-Matic didn't print the card, oddly enough. Normally, Strat-O-Matic will print a third lefty for teams, either in the extra players, but no, sir. Not in the first edition, at least. And this is the case of the way the cards were printed then versus now. If you go get the latest reissue of the 75 Red Sox, you'll most certainly get this Jim Burton card. He pitches in the World Series, for Pete's sakes. So again, no lefty. Then I said, okay, let's go the next 2 years. I got to give Boston a left-handed pitcher. Everybody's got to have one in the bullpen. And again, it's still Bill Lee. Moret's gone. Tom House is here, but he's still property of Atlanta. And they have these 2 guys, Rick Jones and Rick Kruger. Jones has a good ERA, but he gets up a lot of home runs, and his whip is 152. And Kruger has got a 406 ERA. His whip's 151. Not particularly good. At least Jones threw 104 innings, so for intents and purposes, he should be the guy. He's only 21 years old. And then the 4th year, 77 for Boston, looking for that elusive lefty. There's Bill Lee again. Got to have him, of course. 36-year-old Ramon Hernandez used to be a Pirate, but he's washed up. And there's Tom House and Jim Burton and Rick Kruger again. It's not happening, Boston. It is not happening. But it has to happen. Because this is the carryover league, and you got to carry a lefty in the bullpen, Boston. So what are you going to do? Well, nobody else in the league really wants to give you a left-handed pitcher. Nobody wants to say, here, Boston, here's a left-handed pitcher. Why don't you go win the World Series? No other team really wants to do that. Except a team rebuilding, and that's the California Angels, who've had a pretty shrewd offseason thus far. They got a guy. Let's you got to unpack the Angels for a moment. The Angels offseason first, because they made significant progress here by first getting rid of Mickey Rivers for Gene Locklear. They traded a 285 hitter for a 321 hitter for 2 years. This trade's going to look good for the Angels. Then after that, it'll look good for the Yankees. They weren't done. Then they sent Ed Kirkpatrick, a retired player, for a good reliever, Bob Reynolds, and a good center fielder or right fielder, Leroy Stanton. Now they got some defense in the outfield. Then they weren't done. They acquired a catcher. They sent Andy Hassler, a lefty starter, to Houston for this guy, Mike Cosgrove, and a starting catcher, Joe Ferguson. So they're making some progress, folks. The Angels, they're filling out their roster quite nicely. Maybe I'll start liking this team again. I normally didn't start liking them until 1979. Which brings us to the trade. It was the Angels who said, you're going to have to pony up Rick Miller. He is a 1-2 center fielder for Mike Cosgrove. Now, this is not a blockbuster trade by any means, folks. Certainly not. But Cosgrove is left-handed in 1974. He'll play one more year, and I think he might start to fade. Rick Miller will have good seasons all the way through, I think, the early 1980s. I think he plays through 1985. And the Angels will have him and Leroy Stanton and Don Baylor, Joe Ferguson, Gene Locklear DH. The Angels suddenly have had a nice offseason. Notice as well, nothing else in the deal. Straight up. You know, it's like Boston was saying, hey, how about giving us a token for Rick Miller? And the Angels are like, nah, you need the lefty, dude. Nobody else even wants to deal with you. We're at least giving you the lefty. So Boston gets their lefty. His name is Mike Cosgrove, and he's okay. He's fine. He'll probably be a setup guy, and they'll kind of hide him with, you would hope, 3 capable lefties. So he's on the roster. Doesn't need to be added in the draft. That's an active card. The other move they made is that Pittsburgh had Randy Moffett. They got from the Giants years earlier. And Moffat's got some nice years in the 1970s with a Giants uniform. And so Boston sent a retired player and a draft token to the Pirates for Randy Moffett, a player that the Pirates, a talent-rich team, was going to probably put on waivers anyway. But in this case, Boston had to pay a token for that. So when all is said and done, Boston's actually done some nice stuff too. Let's take a look at that. They needed bullpen help. They got 2 arms already. They got Randy Moffett and Mike Cosgrove. They're halfway there. They need 2 more guys. Maybe Bob Stanley comes along. Maybe some other, obviously, right-hander comes along, of which I'm not sure who it would be. But the Red Sox are set with Yastrzemski, Bill Lee, Roger Moret, and now Randy Moffett, with Cosgrove on the roster taking Rick Miller's spot. And then the Red Sox are going to pause. That was their moment, the Red Sox moment. All right, next up, Texas Rangers. This is a fascinating move. They had 5 keepers: Burroughs, Unser, Zisk, Briles, and Jim Bibby. Now, the case of Jim Bibby, let me bring him up for a second here, because this is also pretty interesting. Jim Bibby's 73 card for Texas was really good and pushed a lot of innings, but not enough innings. Here it is, 73. He threw 180 innings for the Rangers with a 3.24 ERA. That was a nice card. Very nice card for Jim Bibby. Okay. Looking for an innings eater. Next year he eats those innings, but it's not a good diet. It's a 4.74 ERA for a 19-19 pitcher whose WAR is 0.2. So the Rangers are like, they decided, we're going to have to go outside and get Fergie Jenkins and Nelson Briles, who you saw in previous videos. They're going to eat the innings for the Rangers next year, not Jim Bibby. Jim Bibby's next good year is 1976 and 77, both with Cleveland. Well, they tried talking to Cleveland. You want your guy? And Cleveland was like, nah, we just added Dennis Eckersley last year. We still have Gaylord Perry and his brother Jim Perry. We're loaded with right-handed starters. So the next taker were your Pittsburgh Pirates. And they're like, you know, we got John Candelaria and Jim Rooker, but our righties are so-so. We prefer to move Bruce Keeson back to the bullpen. We're going to get him there anyway. Let's get him now in 76 or 7. So they can, Pirates are going to make the deal to take one of the Cleveland years on their team. And who did they have to dangle, believe it or not, in this deal as another 1-for-1? How about Richie Zisk? That outfield for the Pirates. Too many outfielders for the Pirates. We know Zisk would be traded anyway. We know he does end up on the Texas Rangers. He doesn't get there till 78. He's got to stop with the White Sox here. But the Rangers are going to go, let's also go back and get the 75 or 76 year from Pittsburgh. And we're going to take the White Sox. Well, the White Sox won the World Series. I don't think they're overly concerned. They're going to lose that great year of 77 Richie Zisk. And that's the spoils of war, I guess. That's the troubles you get when you win the World Series. The White Sox did. They're not going to end up with Richie Zisk. He's going to go straight to Texas. And looking at this particular trade, a straight up 1-for-1. I just put exclamation points here because I'm just so happy with it. It's like, what a great trade this is. Zisk will have some of his best years with the Rangers, and Jim Bibby will win a World Series for the Pirates. This trade did not happen, but it does now. In a 1-for-1 nature. No extra stuff, no balancing tokens, straight up. I love it when we get straight up trades. Here it was a straight up trade, but that was because the Angels were winning it over the Red Sox because the Red Sox were desperate. This is two teams making the right move at the right time. And when you look at both teams, let's go with Texas first here. Texas now had Tom Grieve in their outfield. No longer. Sorry, Tom. Your days are numbered because Richie Zisk is in town. Grieve goes on waivers. They reacquired Del Unser, who used to be a Washington Senator, to play center field, Burrows in right field, and Richie Zisk in left field. Nellie Briles will be the number 2 guy behind Fergie Jenkins, with Jim Umbarger and Stan Perzanowski completing the rotation. What a win-win offseason for the Texas Rangers. That's outstanding. They got a little better defensively in the outfield with Del Unser. They had a terrible outfield a year ago, but Del Unser's reasonably good. And your Pirates? Now the Pirates are thinking, okay, we got Jim Bibby, Jim Rooker, and John Candelaria. Plus Ramon Hernandez is back, lefting the bullpen with Dave Justy. And of course, Pop Stars will get a new card. So now the Pirates are thinking, all right, we've improved. We should be able to take another stab at the Cincinnati Reds in the offseason. So great moves for both teams. You see the next move was Tom Grieve going on waivers because you can't keep a 5th guy. All right, next up, the next moves aren't particularly fascinating here. The Phillies were next. Phillies had an extra keeper, and they want McCarver because he was a Philly. Boone, Twitchell. They had a choice between Cy Acosta and Gary Thomason. Gary Thomason is a really nice 77. And they need somebody who can play first base. Philadelphia's first basemen have been stolen away. They lost Aaron Johnson. They lost Willie Montanez. They lost Tom Hutton. Now you can see why the Phillies are going to need Pete Rose in a couple years. They keep having their first baseman go elsewhere. So Gary Thompson can play a little bit of first base, and that's enough to get you in there. Possibly Tony Taylor can platoon with him. And if somebody else pops up, normally it's not this difficult to find a first baseman. So if they could find the bar is Gary Thompson, and if they could just exceed the bar, they're fine with that too. But at least for now on the keeper list, the fifth guy was Cy Acosta. And Acosta was just deemed as just a regular jag. Just a guy, just a right-handed relief pitcher who's so-so. So he had to be put on waivers. We're at this point in the draft where teams are starting to realize you can't trade these guys. Can't trade Tom Grieve or Cy Acosta or, Tommy Harper or find another guy up here somewhere. Danny Cater. There's no takers for these guys. One of the smarter moves was Pittsburgh actually finding a taker for Randy Moffett, the Red Sox, who needed a quality reliever, and Moffat's got a really nice year there. So that was a boon for the Pirates. But otherwise, teams are starting to see that it's tough to find a taker for your stuff. Cy Acosta, no. Giants were next, same thing. Ed Goodson, nobody wants him. He's got like one good year left. He's a left-handed hitting. He used to play third. I think he just plays first now. So I don't know how even useful Ed Goodson is. He goes on waivers. And that's because they prefer Tito Fuentes in San Francisco. Looking at the Giants, who are after the Phillies. Yeah, they had a choice between Tito Fuentes and Ed Goodson. Now, the good news is Fuentes was dangled as trade bait to Florida. Florida said, nah, we'll hold on to Felix Millan. Detroit has Fuentes in 77, but Detroit says, we'll wait. We'll wait. If we don't make the move for Fuentes, we'll wait till Lou Whitaker arrives, which is in either 1978 or 79. So we might be bypassing the whole Tito Fuentes experiment. So the Giants are like, fine, nobody wants our guy. We'll keep him because Fuentes can play two positions. You can play second base and third base. With Ed Goodson gone, they need both positions. They're set at shortstop with Chris Spire, and they got McCovey and currently Bob Robertson at first base. Plus, of course, they also traded for Bobby Mercer to play right field, Gary Matthews in left. They have Larry Herndon and Von Joshua in center field. Giants look pretty good on paper. Tigers didn't make any more moves. Their big move was getting Don Wilson to join the rotation, joining Mickey Lolich and Mark Fidrich. This is sort of like the old tour of Al Kaline and Jim Northrup, their last stand, the last dance for them in Detroit with John Hiller. The next team up was Arizona. And believe it or not, Arizona is the first team here to pause without making any moves. And by pausing, nothing is finalized, but if a team doesn't want to do anything, they don't have to do anything. And Arizona has 6 guys they want to keep. But instead of just putting guys on waivers, they're going to think about it a little longer because it's a rather crowded room and they don't know how to sort it out yet. They love Redmond, they love Dave May, and they want to hold us on to Steve Stone long enough until he eventually wins the 1980 Cy Young Award, which is still three years away. So there's 3 guys, Mike Hegan, Reggie Cleveland, and Bob Moose, all vying for one spot, and they're not exactly sure which guy they should go to. Obviously, Hegan's a slick fielding first baseman. The other 2 guys used to be innings-eating starters, now are mostly relievers. And it could be a case that they drop all 3 guys and find somebody else. So without a better option, there's no need to make this decision now, because obviously the phones aren't ringing in Arizona for any of these cats. One thing to note, Roger Freed will be taken in the draft in the first round with that Monster 77 card, which they have the rights to. But they're going to need defense for him, and they practically will play him at first base. So Mike Hegan makes a lot of sense. As if he's a 2 first baseman, he would come in late in games for Roger Freed. So he makes a little bit more sense as he's already there, versus Reggie Cleveland and Bob Moose, who just fall into the regular category of relievers, along with guys you've already seen, like Cy Acosta and some of the other guys who have been, you know, the other pitchers who've kind of just been pushed. Tom Griffin, another pitcher, same sort of thing, kind of get pushed, you know, pushed on the waivers. Is there anybody else up here? Dave Nelson. A couple hitters, a lot of hitters were pushed on the waivers. All right. Let's see what happens after that. All right, then we have some bookkeeping moves. Seattle sends a retiring Mattiel Lou back to the Pirates, where he played his career. Alan Foster, he was a nice story for Pittsburgh, but he wasn't going to be picked up anymore. He's still got some juice left, but he's going to be on waivers. He's actually one of the better. I think Foster's probably better than Acosta or the other relievers we just spoke of. And then he was sent to Portland to put on waivers for Danny Cater. So this is all bookkeeping, so that the teams have the proper number of waived and retired pieces. And then this is really easy and convenient. You know, the Colorado Rockies had 2 retired players, and they needed 2 waived players, and the Cubs needed exactly the opposite. So they just flipped these 4 guys, and there's nothing going on here at all, folks. Don't be concerned about 2 retired for 2 waivers, because Fanzone and Hunley aren't much either. And they'll probably they may end up on the retired list as well. But the good news is that through all that, the Cubs got to the proper math. And by proper math, it's 40202. And now proper math is already through 7 teams here. There's a couple more. Cleveland and Portland need to make a deal with Milwaukee and Philadelphia. That would work. And then they get proper math. Of course, you know Arizona's situation. Minnesota and Pittsburgh are tight. And that brings us to the end of this video. When we pick it up, we have the final 8 teams, and there are still plenty of fireworks left, folks. We still got 10 keepers, 10 bonus keepers. Where do they start? Well, obviously Arizona. That'll just take it down to 8 when they get rid of 2 guys. But you have Oakland has Bando Tennis and Dick Green, and 2 of those guys are not going to be on Oakland. The Mets have 3 guys, Max Garcia, Don Hahn, Harry Parker. Not much of a loss there. But the Dodgers have to move either Willie Davis or Willie Crawford. That is a good player. Somebody should make a deal for Willie Davis or Crawford. And the White Sox have to move either Bill Melton, Buddy Bradford, or Bob Stinson somewhere along the line. Stinson to Seattle for putting Ted Kubiak on waivers makes a lot of sense. That would help both of those teams there. But that'll be in the part 4. So when we do part 4 next week, not only do we want to have all the moves of teams 24 to 32, then we go back to the top and everybody wants to finalize the 40202. So we get to this number here. 128, 64, 64. Think of it as the value, the payroll of the league, the salary cap of the league. That's $1,504,957 to start with, and we were $22,000 over. We want to get down to $1,286,464. And here we are. We're at 138.61.57. So we still have to shave $10,000 off of the keeper list there. So to get to 128.6464. The token numbers presently. The Cubs have picked up a couple tokens. This was the Fergie Jenkins move. But the big winner right now is the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers have picked up 3 tokens in this process already. And there's no real big loser for tokens, which is good. We don't see... No tokens is bad. A lot of tokens is not necessarily great if you don't buy anything good with them. Milwaukee, how did they do that? Oh yeah, the Kerp of Aqua card is an outlier, hits 333 in 77. That's why they got 2 of the 3 tokens. And the next token that Milwaukee got, oh yeah, sending Don Wilson to the Tigers. So those tokens are pretty dubious for Milwaukee. But that's good. Maybe Milwaukee will make some use out of that cash. And when you have a lot of cash like that, you get to improve players for free, or you get first crack of undrafted free agents. Hopefully the Brewers will be getting to a point where they can improve Robin Yount. He's been on the team for several years now with his, his rookie card, and it's not very good. He's just a 250 hitting shortstop with no power. But you really want to get Yount into an all-star or card sooner or later. Eventually the Hall of Fame sort of cards for Robin Yount. But anyway, that's a story for another day. Next week, we're going to have to find... Oakland's going to have to find a home for Sal Bando or Gene Tennis or Dick Green, and we'll find that out next week. The Ohio players, the Mets, the Big Red Machine, Baltimore, Atlanta, the Dodgers, and the world champion Chicago White Sox. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.